Okay, great. So now we're heading into the uh, last pieces of organizing leather and getting ourselves pieces cut out and all that stuff. We just did the blades. There are a couple of tools that I forgot to show you. This is one. This is a flush cutter. Some people call it wire nippers and different things, but there's something special about this type. This particular one is that when you close it, if you look in the back, it's absolutely flat. So there's no. It's like the single bevel knives or the single-ended knives. Where can I get a good view? It's like the single-ended knives is so flat that you can put it flush up against what you want to cut, and then cut it. Meaning that if you need to cut just the a little piece of something without disturbing the rest of the leather, you can do it like right on the surface or right on the edge and get inside an area. This is invaluable to have. This is leather shears. You can get the big ones, you can get the small ones, but something that's designed for cutting leather other than a standard scissors that will last. I highly recommend you investing in a pair. And this tool, which is a vernier caliper, I mean, it does what it looks like it does. It measures, right? It's a digital one. This one measures in inches, millimeters, fractions of inches, or decimals and whatnot. And you can also use it for getting the inner circumference of something. If you use this side, you can get the height of something or the depth of something by using this end and pushing it into the divider and then seeing how much it's rated. And for the thickness of things, if you want to see how thick a piece of leather is, you can use the tool I was using earlier, that gauge, or you can just use you can use these calipers and test. But of course, it's going to be better applicable in different places and areas and at different times. I use this all the time. So these are the tools I'm showing you, are the ones that I use all the time. There's many more that I haven't even touched, but we're not going to be touching right now. And yeah, so I'm going to make one note. I said I was going to keep making notes. I'm going to make one note, which is to apply Resolene to main piece, right? And then add leather sheen again. So this is an experiment. I haven't done this yet before, so you'll learn it along with me. And once you begin using blades, you're going to have to get a strop. It's just a piece of leather that's usually stuck to a piece of wood. You can use plain leather if you wish, just to make sure it's vegetable tan. But most of the time you see it with this green substance, and that green substance is just something called rouge. This is the brand that I buy. It gives me the best performance, but you can get many brands that are cheap that work just as good, and you can get different colored ones that give you different grits. So it's kind of like sandpaper. It's microscopic particles in it. So whereas sandpaper will come in 150 grit, 2000 grit, and even 3000, 4000 grit paper that you think is really high and really smooth, these are rated in the millions. And there's another compound I use often. This is another one of the rouge compounds. There's another compound I use often, which is Autosol. Autosol is a metal polish that works in a very similar way. And I apply this, or you can use Brasso to your strops. And I have quite a few strops. Many I have made and some that I've bought. The two that I use the most, and again I use them in different scenarios, are the ones that I bought. Like this one was bought at Weaver, I believe. It has a very nice plush kind of surface here, and on this side was plain, and I added Autosol to that side. On this one, which actually no, I think this one is Weaver. Anyway, one of these is yeah, and this side I put the white rouge on it, and you would notice these screws, these standoffs are very valuable because right now this is resting directly on the table surface, and I hate that because it leaves the residue, and it's like, you can even see it here, that gets on your leather and on everything. So I don't like when it touches the surface. So I love when they have standoffs. If you don't have, just put a couple screws on each side and then you're safe, right? Just remember that when you're doing your stropping, don't hit your blade on the steel, right? Either that or use some soft screws like aluminum screws or something. But my most used strop is, and most effective strop is this one that I built. This one has canvas at the back, along with autosol, actually brasso I think on this one, and this one has just a piece of vegetable tan leather with not just the rouge, but what I use is, and I'll teach you how to build yours if you want to go in this direction, and how to build a regular one. I use mineral spirits. This is kind of expensive for a little bottle of this, but I use mineral spirits. I make a solution out of that, and I grind this down to dust and then mix it with the mineral spirits into a paste, and then we put it on top of here. Now that trick, and many of these tricks I picked up from oh my gosh, Philip from the Leathercraft Masterclass, which is a course I highly recommend you take after you begin working on leather. He does go from beginner stage, but even I find that his beginner stage might take you a little. It'll be helpful if you don't spend that money yet. Get a little experience, not much, just enough to know your way around stuff, and then jump into his course, and then you can go from there. But as with his course and every other course, you take what you get from it and you apply it to yourself, and you move on, and you keep going, you keep going. So it's not a matter of I learn everything from him, I do everything he does, unless you want to, and then that's my craft. He also taught me a process of stropping, and it's super effective and interesting. Many people actually don't know about it, so I'll use this as an example. Most people will tell you, and listen, if you Google how to strop 15 times, you will find 15 different ways. So I'm not going to tell you there's a way to strop. I strop sometimes, I just run my blade edge along here. All it does is it polishes the edge, right? Takes off the excess uneven parts and smooths it out to make it razor sharp, right? And then I might run it just along the autosol a couple times, and then I'm ready to go. And you will notice the difference immediately. It glides through your leather, and you continue going. With a strop like this that I don't want to press, I tend to strop like this when it's held upright, and I strop down like this. And then, of course, I come here and I get my burr off the edge, and I come back a strop, and I'm good to go. Strop as often as you need to, right? With this one, I strop mostly by causing the rouge to melt due to friction, and you do that by going pretty fast. Now, don't start doing this off the bat because I don't want you to hurt yourself. Took me a while before I got the hang of it, but once you get into it, I'm maintaining the angle. That's the important part. And I don't know if it's going to show on the camera, but it's actually getting shinier. That's because it's kind of melting. And we have an edge here that's ready to go. It looks like it's uneven. That's actually just the green stuff there. Turn it over. I get him on the brasso a little bit. And yeah, we're gonna skive with this stuff. So I always leave my strop out and ready to use, but I'm not gonna keep this big one out here. I do use this for my skiving knives, but since I'm pressed for space, I'm gonna put him away, and I'm gonna put him away, and I'm just gonna stick with this guy because he fits. Make sure you have room, like I said. So we agreed we were going to use the pebbled leather for the pockets. It doesn't really matter too much how much, like, for example, what piece I use, because one, it's already a textured surface. I'll just cut it off and bring it across instead of taking out the whole piece. It's a textured surface, so I don't need to worry too much about the patterns on it or the blemishes on it, except the big ones, like this big scar that you can see even through the pebbled surface. And it's a beautiful surface, right? The thing about this is that it's soft. Look at it. It's like, and it can stretch to an extent when you are cutting. So just that flex you can see there, that can actually cause discrepancies in the size of your piece. So I like this. I love this. I want to capture this car, right? So remember, this is the piece here, and we know that our card slot is going to be here, and so this is where our T slot is going to stop, meaning that this piece is the piece that's going to be exposed, right? That's all you're going to see, just this area here. So whatever I do here, I just have to make sure that the blemishes or whatever aspects I want to show off are at this part in this area, okay? So with that said, having it right here, I'm going to put it right about here, and I'm going to make sure that everything else is fine underneath, even though you can't see it outright. When I'll give you a tip, guys. When you build something, assume somebody's going to take it apart. So when you build it, if you have to take shortcuts, do so only if you really need to. If you can do something that's clean on the inside, clean on the outside, that if somebody does actually take it apart, it won't shame you, quote unquote. That's a testament to your craftsmanship, right? So I'm gonna just use this. I love this. I'm gonna use this, right? This is on the, I want to put this on the right side because the scar is coming down like this, right? So the curve is gonna be going down here for the card slot. So I'm just gonna line it up, and I'm gonna hold it now because this surface is so stringy and whatnot. As I said just now, I'm going to use a sharp awl that really kind of cuts deeper than the regular awl, scratch awl that I use. And what I'll do is I'm not pressing down hard at all. I'm going to just do multiple scratches. I'm making sure I'm along my line. I notice I'm going past it. I'm going all the way off the edge of it. I'm going to come here and make sure the edge is also secure. So I am putting such low pressure on this thing. That's the key here. I'm putting low pressure on this so it's not stretching or pulling on the surface and making it elongated. While I'm keeping the pressure down, I'm going to put my fingers on this side. I'm going to do the same thing. And finally, without moving it, we're gonna go. This would be a good option for taping it to the leather. You see the adhesive on the tape. If you use the right tape, like a very weak Scotch tape or something, once it's transparent, it wouldn't affect the surface of the leather really. So what you would do is you would run the tape here. Run it on the edges, and then you're good to go. So if I take this off, we have my, and this is going to actually help me cut it, and I will show you how, or make it easier to cut. It's going to expose another technique that I plan to show you anyway. So we're going to do the same thing here. And by the way, in case you're wondering, there are leather pens that you can buy that will write in a color like white or something to that effect. If you do, make sure you know it says permanent or not, because you don't want to end up writing permanent or anything and then you can't get it off. Some of them are actually designed to come off easily depending on the surface of your leather. So we are practically through this and we're ready to cut. And we're going to start cutting with this, right? So I don't need my scissors. If I'm pausing, it's because I'm trying to make sure we're doing everything that I need to. So I could put Vaseline here to protect the surface, but this surface is already well protected, so I won't put Vaseline until I'm finished. And just because I don't want to go through all that trouble right now, and I don't need to. But again, this is something you decide how you want to do it. Where's my knife? My leather cutting knife. So, a new blade. I don't care how it looks. I'm going to start with a new blade, and for this this particular one doesn't have a very good back because it's plastic, so it actually tends to get eaten away by the blade itself. So I use a pliers, and you're just making sure that, remember, this is where the seam or the cut is, not on this side, meaning break it away like this, right? Only push out as much as you need to, and I like to turn my eyes away and do that, just in case. Can't be too careful. Take my piece, throw it into my little container, and here we have a fresh blade to cut with. Not putting out too much, right? And I'm going to use my ruler with the cutting guide. If you are concerned about cutting your fingers, especially when you're doing something like skiving, you can get, as I said earlier, you can get some of these, stick it on your finger. These are cut proof. I'm not willing to test it directly. I'm not sure what brand I got when I got these, but hey, they seem pretty good. I'm giving enough pressure to cut my finger open, and I'm just seeing tiny fibers, and that's it. So I guess this would be, but I like to get my hands as close to the work as possible, so I have many cuts, but you work as comfortably as you can. My ruler is clean, right? Raise up my edge. And again, this ruler is completely aluminum, so this will get cut by the knife. So I need to line up and be a little generous. So if I can't find my exact line, if you're gonna err on the side of any caution, give it a little extra to the outside so that you can always trim it off. But remember, we cut away from our work, so we don't want to cut into this. We want to cut out that way. So if we cut out by accident, it doesn't affect the piece here. Now, again, we do not want to press hard because this is a very supple leather that stretches. So once I have my line, I am just going to do some very small, light cuts, hardly pressure. It's hardly even cutting. The little thing I was telling you about that the oil helps to do, what you would do if you have a supple leather or something very soft, right? What you would want to do is do what you call a channel cut. A channel cut allows you to cut a channel into it first, right? Very thin, slim channel. And as you draw your knife again, the channel guides your knife right into it. So it gives you less of a chance of cutting in a bad way. So the channel cut was already made with the awl, and all we're doing is, no pun intended, all we're doing is following that. And I'm telling you, hardly any pressure at all. I don't care if every leather crafter on YouTube says you don't need to do it like this, and they just take one big cut and go, or they use a head knife, or they use something else. This is the way I do it. You find the way that you do it and be comfortable with it. You're not accountable to anyone for how you make it, right? Typically, I would not want to have this here like this, so I'll just cut this out. And actually, what I like to do is separate. So I could use a knife to cut this area off, but again, that wears on the knife. So I just want to remove. I don't need all this extra stuff, right? So I'm just going to put this aside. I'm not throwing it away. It's going in a bin or a bag that I keep, right? And now I can work freely with the two pieces here. It's more difficult, and I didn't say harder, it's more difficult or more challenging to work with softer leathers like these than it is to work with stiffer, firmer leather like the main pocket ones that we're using. But if you can get it down here, this ruler has a tendency to twist, by the way, so I have to be super careful once I start my cutting. So I'm gonna just film myself cutting this one out, and then I'll just breeze through the other one and get back into the video with you. One other good thing about channel cutting is it doesn't, sometimes you might want to cut a piece of leather, and when you do cut it and you reach the end, I don't know if I'll get it to do it here, but anyway, what happens is you get a piece that kind of sticks out like that, and it kind of looks like this edge here when it should really be straight. So your orientation when you're lining up to cut it also helps with that. For softer leathers and softer materials, these roller cutters are excellent. However, I just don't like cutting them along with a ruler. And if I'm cutting a template, I'm going to use a ruler. I don't care what you say. So we're done. You see our pocket is going to look like this, and it's going to have this piece here. So when it's done, you'll actually see that scar. Isn't that cool? And I'll go ahead and cut this last piece. Okay, and here we have it. We're done cutting out our main pockets on the inside, right? So we'll see about fixing up these for use. Now we are going to cut out our pockets. But there's something I'm wondering here. On the back side of the leather, so let's say we cut this pocket out. On the back side, you can put a lining, or you can finish up this edge area to have a nice, I'll show you the most common technique, but I don't actually use that technique anymore. But there's one thing that to factor. Now remember, we're going to put an inlay into this, and I've been thinking about what shape we should use, and I kind of just settled on using a standard shape, a primitive. So I'll just use the cutting templates that I have. Yeah, this is what I was warning you about in the intro video. When you buy these kind of kits on Amazon, they're typically quite cheap and they tend to fail on you. So they're great to practice with, great to use when you're making mock-ups, but I would not use it on final products. I would just simply go to one of those leather stores and online and buy it from them, buy their hardware. Right, so I wanted to cut a piece out. So this is how we do an inlay, and there's a difference between an inlay and an onlay. An inlay means I'm going to take this pocket, cut out a piece or a shape or whatever, and in the space of that, I'll take some material, maybe an exotic material or something. So this is lizard skin, and I will put the lizard skin underneath, so it'll show through here, and I would just glue it on and stitch it on in the background. But remember, at the back, you don't want to have that part exposed. So what you might want to do is, after doing that, you might want to just put like a lining just on the pocket itself. I'm really, really tempted not to go through all of that at this point, but I still want to do the inlay. I think I know how to do it, and then I'll share it with you when we're doing it. Okay. Fair enough. We figured it out. Okay, so I was busy gathering my thoughts, and I'm going to set something to prep my, wrong kit, my branding. This is my branding iron. This is gold foil. So when it comes to branding, you have to choose the best time to brand your product, and to me, branding is best done before you begin all your cutouts and everything, so that you already know where it is, and then you can work around it without any issues. This is our outside backing. I'm going to cut off this excess because this is what we want to work with. And before we cut it out, I want to think about how we apply this, because remember, like I said earlier, I like to brand on the inside, but in this case, I'm branding on the outside, and I'm thinking this is the best. I always love to brand on the bottom right corner. I use a standard branding iron that's connected to It comes with the soldering attachment. Otherwise, I would have to heat it up with like a propane torch or something, and then I plug it into an adjustable. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Don't fall. An adjustable unit, right? It's a regular soldering iron control. You will find people online with entire branding machines, and that's when you're doing volume. You don't want to spend all of that. Don't go there in that direction first. Just there are thousands of dollars for them sometimes, and it makes great sense if you're going to be selling thousands of dollars worth of products regularly. Otherwise, these are just fine. And to me, I love the manual process. You know this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to heat up. It's going to take a while because it's a pretty solid brick. It's going to take a while to heat up, and there is AC on in here, and there is a fan, so it will drop the temperature a little bit, but I'm going to run it up to about 8 on my dial because I'm accustomed to using this. Now, every leather brand's at a different or reacts differently to different temperatures. I just have to be careful here, right? And with that in mind, you have to practice first before you do it. And because it's the manual process, you might end up getting it a little off-center or something to that effect. You know what? That is part of the handmade process. Next up is the... what do you call this? I don't even know what process I call this. But what I do is every product that I make, there is a number kind of serialized. So let's call it serializing it. That says everything about the product and the actual unit number itself, so that I would have a record of it and how many of them I made, and how I went and how I sold them and whatnot. Like kind of like a ledger thing. I don't know. Is that called a ledger? Anyway, where am I going to put that? I'm going to put it somewhere. It's going to be out of sight, and I've chosen this. I've chosen this, the left-hand side of the inner pocket, or the inner piece, and I'm going to put it right here. So this is going to fall right underneath the card pocket. So nobody would see it unless you go digging. And like I said, remember, if you're building it, build it as though someone is going to see it. So, or going to take it apart. So from this period up to here is all going to be covered. I'm free to use all this area. So I'm just going to put it right up in this area here, even if I end up stitching over it to put the pocket on the inside. Okay, so what am I going to put here? Well, this is a Miko Miyuki piece. And so I'm going to give it the Miko Miyuki initial. It's going to be so I put shear carries as 00, and I put slim carries as 01. So this is going to be a 01. And it's the first one of this particular model. So its unit number will be 001, but the model will be how many Miko Miyuki products I have made. So let's say this is the 16th Miko Miyuki product. So let's put 16, and then I'll put 001. So I could put a 016001, doesn't matter. I'll leave it like 1601. And this will go into a record that I have. So this would tell me everything I need to know about it. It's a Miko Miyuki share carry number 16, which is the model. So this is the 16th model that she's created, and the first one of 16. So if I do a limited edition of anything, or a single edition of something, like it's bespoke, then that person will always be able to know that theirs is the only one of its of its kind. I am going to show you the technique I was talking about before on how to finish the back of this. So what are we going to use? We're going to use wax. We can use pure beeswax, which is this. We can use a combination of beeswax and paraffin wax, which is this, which I use most often. And we can use some Columbus wax, that comes in different colors, and it's fantastic to use. And that's what we're going to use for this particular piece. Now, the tool that we're going to use is this iron. Can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's an iron that was advertised as being designed for flattening out the surface, or ironing out the surface of a textured leather like this. It does that to a degree, but I never needed that function, so I ended up using it for something else. It does come with the Chinese 3-prong brick, so I have to put an adapter on it. And I'll go plug it in, and I'm going to set it to the highest, and I'm going to leave it to heat up a bit. And I also have another option that I only built yesterday. I bought this from AliExpress, I think, and I had this Weller. It's the same Weller, actually. This was a real soldering iron that I used to use, and I put down, and I decided to drill out the inside so this will fit. Got this to go in, and this gets really hot really quick, and you can use this to do the ironing, but I prefer the smaller one to work on edges, and that's the real purpose I got this. You would find machines that have this kind of attachment sticking out of it, and there's the dials for the controls, and then you could get all the different heads, and they cost, again, hundreds and thousands of dollars. If you want to get that, I'm not going to tell you no, but it would be remiss of me to say that you don't need it unless you're doing the kind of volume that requires it, and you can justify the cost of something like that. So we're waiting on two things to heat up. We're waiting on our branding iron to heat up, which is getting pretty hot right now. I can feel it. And we're waiting on the what do you call that? The leather iron. Yeah, let's call it the leather iron to heat up. In the interim, let's pick out a shape for our card pocket inlay. This is our card pocket, and we have to pick out a shape that, because I was going to do a design and cut it out, and then I thought, you know what, let's not. Let's just pick a shape that already exists and just cut it out. I was thinking we could just use this. It would look neat. Maybe we could do one and then do another one underneath, and or we could just do a single one and just imagine that it's decorative. Or we could use something like this, and then do one in this direction and one in this direction. One in this direction, one in this direction. How about that? But I'm just thinking about ease of use and time and whatnot, because I'm spending a lot of time on this. You can't beat a good old square, right? So we won't go with a square. We'll go with a whatever we choose is gonna go last consideration. What about an oval instead? Kind of organic. So we'll do the oval. We'll just make it diagonal and leave it just like that. Alright, I think my iron is pretty hot, so I'm going to use the anvil, and I'm going to get to see what my iron is doing to plain leather without... so there's two things to factor in: pressure and heat. I like to ensure that my iron is clean before I start. So because it's a brass tip, I'm just going to use a brass brush and make sure that there's nothing stuck in it from before. I have no fumes coming off, meaning there's no leather or adhesive stuck to it from before. And I'm going to just give it a firm press and see. Now, because I don't know how it's going to react, it could burn right through the leather, or it can, it'll tell me. So I'm just going to come right here for 5. And there we have a brand. Now, am I happy with this brand? It's not bad. It's a bit burnt. But let me clean off this thing. One thing you should do is try to brush your branding after the fact, because some of that charred leather in the inside ends up staying, and then it looks bad after, it looks uneven after, so you don't know if that's actually what's happening. So it looks good. It's a little hot, and instead of changing the temperature, because this will take a year to cool down, what I'll do instead is just change the duration of the press. So if I do 1, 2, 3, that's a little neat. If it gets too hot as well, what can happen is you'll see that along the outside of the brand, it starts to burn the leather. So it might sound like it will give a good effect, but it actually looks like it just got burnt. Now, how would it react on this with the leather finish? So you see, we have to make sure for each scenario we're testing it. So we're going to test it on the edge here. 1, 2, 3. You hear it crackling. Look at that. That's a complete burn. And that's why we test. So let me get whatever that is off of my branding iron. No, I don't have a lot to play with because I don't have a lot of space. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick one. And you see what's happening. The leather property has changed, and therefore the iron is now entirely too hot to even be near this. So I'm going to have to turn this right down to probably about 6 or so. Clean it off and let it cool down. It's going to take a little bit to cool down because it takes longer to cool than it does to heat up. So we'll leave it, and while that's happening, we'll attend to the other iron that's been warming up. Now remember, we planned to work the back of this. Let me show you what most people do, and then I'll show you what I do. There's a substance called toconol, which is this. Toconol does wonders for your edges. In fact, I use it on almost all of my edges that are not painted or not using something like edge coat. And it's been discovered, I guess you could say that you can use toconol to paste it in onto your surface, the back of your piece. So actually, let's do that. Let me show you what it looks like when you do it. So I'll take a little bit of toconol. I'll use a spudger. So what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of toconol. All right. Excuse me with the camera angles. I know I promised work on it. All right. And I'm going to just do a little bit of spreading. If you're going to do this, I recommend, you see that there's some that got on the surface of the table. I recommend getting that clear simply because while nothing is wrong with it, like it's not going to corrode anything, if you get it on the front of your leather and you press into it, right, it can end up discoloring your leather unintentionally and making some dark spots, and you don't want that unless you want that. So try not to allow a mistake to happen for the sake of a mistake, you know. So we're just going to spread some. And what we do afterward, you could use different items, but the most popular one, again, and then some leather crafters will tell you that this is the only way to do it, and I guarantee you it's not the only way to do it, is to use a glass burnisher. Some glass burnishers you can buy with a rubber piece at the back here to hold it, or a leather piece, or you could make your own leather slot to hold it. A lot of them do that. I didn't. And what you do is you just burnish it, because toconol reacts really quickly to the friction, and it shifts properties, and that's actually what you want from an edge working perspective, and that gives this wonderful, wonderful properties. You could do it for however long you want, and if you want to do more than one coating, which I've actually never seen anyone really do, but look at this. That's sealed, that's not coming off, and it's really nicely touched, and you can't really complain about this. However, this is what I like to do, and this is primarily because I find when you do this, I've seen examples of the front of the leather actually getting slightly skewered and slightly stretched. Also, it just, for me, if you look at the front of what happened here, you practically burnish the front onto the desk. And, you know, it's a little things like that that over time I realized may not be for me. I'm not telling you this will happen to you, but pay attention. That's all I'm saying. So what I like to do is use wax. I'm not going to use the Columbus here because the Columbus is black, and that's why I would use the Columbus. But here I'll use the paraffin and beeswax. To make this is so simple. You get some paraffin wax, which is edible, right? But it's actually edible. But you just get some paraffin wax, equal parts paraffin wax, and some equal parts of this. You just put them in like a little foil bowl, make a little foil bowl, and then you put them in boiling water and let them melt together. Mix it up a bit and then take it out, let it cool, and you have some of this stuff, right? You can use candle wax. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. So what I'm going to do here is put some of this wax down. And this is, in my opinion, this is easier than using the Tokonole version because all I'm doing is rubbing some wax on it. And now that I've rubbed my wax and my iron is already hot, I'm going to just do this. So what you're seeing is the reason it looked weird just now is because there was a huge chunk of wax that didn't melt yet. And the one thing I would tell you about this method is be careful with the amount of heat that you apply in one position for too long. A thin leather, especially something like goat leather, goat skin, will actually bend and curl up and get ruined if you're not careful. This is some pretty thick, hefty cow hide, so this is okay, right? I can feel it, it's not over hot, and it's not coming through to the front and sweating, which can happen sometimes, right? Now, you can look at the difference between the two and say, well, the Tokonole is a lot glossier and more burnished. And you're right. But if that's the look you're going for, that's wonderful. But for me, I like this natural, more natural type of finish. It is slightly glossy to the when you put it in a certain light. But what I could tell you about it, though, is that it's completely firm. And it's wax that's melted into the fibers and sealed, so it's waterproof. It's all of those things. And all I did was iron it a little bit. So if I put a couple drops of water, it's hydrophobic. Yeah? As in, it's not going to come through your leather, right? And the Tokonole may be more hydrophobic. Let's see. No, not so much. It's still, actually, it's kind of ugly. But I prefer this. So, I think I'm working too far up. So all this time we've been waiting for the other iron to cool down. Let's let it cool even further so we can work on this piece one time as we have the wax out and the iron out. Let's wax up this piece with the Columbus wax, and let's do the two pieces, and then we'll just iron them in. So there's a side I've been working with, so I'm just gonna gently, I'm not pressing hard, gently get some wax on it. You don't have to put much. It melts well and it goes in to the fibers well. So don't worry about it. It's not a science. Okay. That's one. It doesn't look any different. And we're good. So with these, especially because this is soft, I don't want to spend too much time on one spot again with this. I just want to give it a quick rub. Now this tape you see on it is actually designed to help you glide on different surfaces without affecting the actual surface of this. It's a whole roll. I've actually only used 2 strips of it since I've had it for like over 4 years of using this particular tool. So it's it lasts long, right? I'll tell you the name of the tape after I finish with this piece here. Now, rubbing onto the Columbus wax doesn't rub off as easily as this. So if I wanted a thick layer, I would probably have used this. But I'm pretty happy with using the Columbus wax. So sometimes what I do is, because it's all, I've already melted part of it, it's warm. What I will do is take the, I have to be careful how I rest this down, right? Because it will burn through this. Take the Columbus wax as it's already warm and run it over a second time and give it a nice, just a second coating if you want to put it. But the thing is, I want to grab the edges. And then I'll just run the iron over it again. So I'm going to keep distributing the heat evenly by running in circles so that I don't warp my piece. If at all, I don't want to warp it too much. It's okay if it stretches here because it can always be trimmed. There we go. And that's the reason why I did that first. You can't see it very well here, but this is a little flatter than this in terms of the ridges. But the inside here feels so good and it will last. So for this piece, I'm not pressing very hard, by the way. I'm not actually trying to flatten it. So I'm just letting the natural weight of it and the heat do the work. So this piece is ready. We're gonna leave that there. Let's put this on the ground because it's tiled, so it won't burn anything. And we're leaving the iron to cool. Don't worry. We're gonna do the quick serialization here. Doesn't matter what side because I'll just work accordingly. We already know what we want to put. So I'm using a very cheap, this is my first stencil set, lettering set that I ever bought. And it works just fine, so why buy it? Why buy a second one? Right? I'm just getting all the numbers and the letters that I need. And then I have to make a kit for this. I'm terrible. I'm a leather craftsman and I don't have like the stuff that I sell to people. So all I need are 2 M's, right? According to the thing here, if you can see, 2 M's, 0, 1, and 6, and then we're done here. So let's use a maul. Now there's a little spring-loaded ball here that doesn't work anymore, so this will just fall off. So maybe I should get a new one. I have another set, but it's used really for stamping into metal, and I have to be careful with when I'm doing it on soft leather. I'm looking for a hammer. I don't want to use anything that's metal. I can use this double-sided plastic, or I can use the mauls that I showed you in the intro video, the kind of mauls that we use to pound. So for this one, I'll use a small one like this, but I have my main one that I use for stitching and whatnot, and for stencil cutting, I will keep for that when we get to that point. So for now, let's just finish with this by putting the M, and it doesn't have to come out perfectly. So what I'll do is I'll put it here, and I'll give it a light tap, and there we go. I'll put next to it, I'll give it a light tap, and we have Miko Miyuki. Then I'm gonna get my 0. So the type of carry I would put next to it. So because it's not a sheer carry, it's a slim carry, it'll be 0, 1, 0. So obviously this system works for me because I know the system, right? It's a little off, but it works, right? 0, 1, it actually slipped off the side here. 0, 1, and what I want to put underneath directly underneath the initials is the model number. So that'll be 16, and finally the number, the actual serial number of it, meaning how many of these she made, which is 001. I'll put that a little offset, and there we go, serialized. Now now that I have done that, you can see it actually comes out on the back a little bit. If I had done this first and then I ironed it, this would have gotten flattened out quite a bit. Sometimes to the point where you can't even see. So now that we've done this, what I'll typically do as well is take a photo and then store all this information digitally. So branding, let's see what happens on regular leather. So the iron is cooler now. It might be too cool, but we'll see. So for regular piece of leather, it barely comes out. Now, ideally, you don't really want it to burn, which is what this is not doing, so that's good. But it has to be hot enough with enough pressure to register the brand evenly. So I'm going to just give it a slight rock, but make sure I don't go off kilter so that it doesn't like tilt and give you this double vision kind of feeling. And this is a much better brand. So let's see what happens with this now. So we're out of space. We can eck in a little bit of space here. So let's see what happens if we do that. We get an okay-ish brand. So I'm thinking if we put it here with this heat and a little bit of pressure, even pressure, for a few seconds, we'll get a really nice brand like this. And that's what I'm after. So, it's do or die. It's now or never. If we screw this up, I'll have to take off this whole thing. Or I'll just cut it out and make an inlay version of it and then put it somewhere else. There's many things you can do. I don't have the time to make that kind of mistake, but I will make a couple mistakes as well, and that you can recover from later on. But anyway, we decided that this is how we're going to close it. And we're going to put the brand right here on the inside of this. Now remember, if we're stitching along this line when we're making the wallet, we're stitching 1/8 in, so we have to leave space. So I'm going to come in round about this area. Round about this area here. So what I like to use is this. It's called something jig. I'll put it in the description. But I made my own because I didn't want to spend close to $100 for a set. I just 3D printed this. This is made of this isn't PLA. PLA will melt really quickly against a hot material. So this is PETG. But you're not keeping it for very long anyway. So all I want to do is make sure that I have a kind of a square, so that I don't go too off center. We're eyeballing this. I don't have a arbor press. I don't have a branding press. And maybe a little crooked here, but nothing to do. There we go. Now, I didn't put enough pressure on this end, but that's okay. This is a learning process. I'm not going to try to go do it again, because you mess up by a bit of a millimeter, then you screw up the whole thing. But this is fine for now. This is fine for now, because again, we can always choose later on if we want to edit this. But I'm trying to do this, and the camera is right up against this, and it's hitting it. So I couldn't really get myself inside here. So I'll settle for this as part of the maybe I'll do a giveaway and just give it a I don't know. But it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the branding done. So when the wallet is closed, that's what it will look like. And that's about all we're gonna do. Actually, I thought I would show you how to do a heat transfer. Sorry, a foil transfer. So I'll take a piece of this foil tape. I'll just cut off a little piece here. And this is really finicky. This is super temperature sensitive. So normally a machine would do this, but you can do this on your own too if you know the leather and you know the environment. Because even though I have this set for, let's say, 6 on my dial, that's 6 right now, meaning that the temperature of the room has to be taken into consideration. So I don't know what the effect is going to be So what I'll do is I'll find the area that I want to mark. I'll put the foil over it with the foil facing up, right? And this is the hard part. Because you can't see through the foil, you're going to have to kind of assume you're in the right spot. And you do not want to leave it on with a lot of heat. When you're using heat, you don't want to leave it on for very long, right? The foil can actually just melt straight into the leather. So I'm going to do a quick press and come out. Now I'm looking at it and I can tell that a decent amount of it came out onto the leather, and all you have to do is peel it off, and you have a foil, gold foil transfer here. What you can do from this point is just dust off a bit, get the extra pieces out, and it's a little blurry because I moved it around a little bit, but that's how you do a brand transfer using heat. Low heat, start off with the lowest of the heats and then work your way up, because I guarantee you turn that dial up a little bit. As soon as you touch that foil, the whole thing will just crumple into itself and burn. And yeah, you just waste your foil and you'll have to clean up your iron. But you should be cleaning your iron anyway. So one more brush with the brass brush. Nothing harder than brass. And I'm going to turn off my unit. So that's that. So let's leave that video here, and let's come back when we decide we're going to cut the leather. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this is helpful, and ask me questions and give me suggestions, and apologize again for the camera angles. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.